biblical data about the Queen of Heaven, these do suggest that the women of late 7th and early 6th century Judah and Jerusalem exercised religious power. They worshipped a goddess whose cult they found particularly appealing, and they went so far as to introduce the cult of that goddess into the temple compound itself. The worship of a father and a mother deity is part of the original Israelite religion, and it was practiced for centuries. That's Susan Ackerman's study also. This is the historical context of the Old Testament, our Bible, the ancient Israelite religion. Do you really think that the idea of a heavenly father and a heavenly mother refutes Mormonism? I have bad news for you. It doesn't. Now, Susan Ackerman, in another study, The Queen Mother and the Cult in Ancient Israel, this is in also the book The Women in the Hebrew Bible by Routledge Press, 1999. If I can get these mosquitoes off me. On page 181, she notes something extremely interesting that I want you to be absolutely aware of, with no questions asked. Our understanding of what comprised cult in ancient Israel has changed considerably in the past 15 years. So if you think you understand the historical context of the Bible, be careful, because it's changing. This is a solid biblical scholar telling us this information. She says, since the late 1970s, we have seen multiple attempts to redefine the nature of Israelite religion, both in the light of new archaeological discoveries and also in the light of the more nuanced exegesis of the biblical text. Remember, exegesis is just bringing out the meaning of the text. What we have learned from these numerous redefinitions is that the ancient cult allowed a far greater latitude in religious beliefs and practices than the exilic and the post-exilic editors of the Bible would admit. In other words, we've come to doubt the rather homogeneous picture presented by the biblical writers of Israelite religion. There you have it, folks. If you're reading just an English translation of the Bible and you think you're understanding the actual historical reality, you're wrong. It's been rewritten. They had an agenda also. And that agenda was against the actual Israelite religion that had been had for centuries. Now this idea of the goddess, she has gone underground several times. Later on, she emerges in the wisdom literature of the Hebrews. And then later on, as the Shekinah in Judaism, and even on up into medieval times in the Zohar. So she has never really fully been suppressed. She's just no longer allowed in the canon of the Bible. But that itself is a politically oriented document. The canon itself. Anybody who's studied the history of the canonization knows that. You are not getting the truth of what happened in history from the Bible itself. We must go to the archaeology, and that has changed the picture in the last 15 years. See, again, archaeology does not have the last word, and the new archaeological discoveries that are occurring is changing what we understand about ancient Israelite religion. So we must keep updated. That's the lesson here. And then on page 182, she says, a case can be made that Asherah worship was customary among the populace. S.M. Olien has even argued that the worship of Asherah may have been part of the state cult. Asherah may have been worshipped, that is, along with Yahweh in official Judite religion. Moreover, we would be wrong if we assume that Micaiah's worship of Asherah in Yahweh's temple was an anomaly. This is not an aberration. This is the fundamental ground of their religion. Granted, it was destroyed periodically from time to time and taken out of the temple. That has nothing to do with it being an authentic aspect of the religion. The biblical text is indeed explicit that a third Asherah, the one that replaced the statue Hezekiah destroyed, stood in the Jerusalem temple. Thus 2 Kings 21:7 describes how Manasseh erected an Asherah in Yahweh's temple in Jerusalem. So we have to understand that. And then finally on page 184, Ackerman's powerful here. This pairing of Yahweh and Asherah at Kuntilat Arjud and in Samaria should not be regarded as syncretistic or heterodox within Israelite religion. In other words, this is not an aberration. This is the norm. He proposes instead that the worship of Asherah was a part of the normative religion of the northern kingdom. Olyan notes several data in support of this conclusion. First, Jehu in his purge of Samaria is not described as destroying the Asherah that Ahab had previously erected. Indeed, according to 2 Kings 13:6, this Asherah remained standing in Samaria after Jehu's death. Since Jehu's targets in his reform were non-Yahwist elements in the cult, the fact that the Asherah was allowed to survive suggests it was perceived as appropriate within official Judaism, within official Yahwism. That there was an Asherah in the state temple devoted to Yahweh at Bethel, according to 2 Kings 23:15, likewise suggests that the Asherah was considered legitimate in the Yahwism of the northern kingdom. Despite the virulent attacks on non-Yahwist cult elements in the northern prophet Hosea, the cult of Asherah is never condemned. Olyan argues that Amos's silence with regard to Asherah worship is equally significant. He concludes, based only on an examination of the biblical sources, we argue that the Asherah was a legitimate part of the cult of Yahweh in the north, in state religion and in popular religion. That's fascinating, isn't it? I bet that's something you didn't understand, isn't it? To wrap up Ackerman's phenomenal study, the idea of the motive of divine sonship in Judo-royal ideology, this is on page 187 of her study, I believe it provides a clue for understanding the role of the Queen Mother in the southern monarchy. For if the Judean royal ideology holds that Yahweh is the adopted father of the king, then is it not possible that the adopted mother of the king is understood to be Asherah? Given, as we've noted above, Asherah was seen by many in both the state and popular cult as the consort of Yahweh. The language of divine adoption may imply not only Yahweh, the male god, as surrogate father, but also Asherah, the female consort, as the surrogate mother. If this is so, the implications for the Judean Queen Mother are enormous. As the human mother of the king, the Queen Mother could be perceived as the earthly counterpart of Asherah, who is the king's heavenly mother. That's Susan Ackerman on page 187. Now, if you can find something in this that refutes the idea of Mormonism, you be sure and let me know in your videos, won't you?